April 18th, 2020.
Was a day that I will never forget. It was the day when a truly horrifying thing happened to me. I was 19 years old, and I had just gotten into a heated fight with my parents. The fight was the last straw for me, and I decided to leave and strike out on my own. I rented a cabin nearby, hoping to have some peace and quiet to sort out my thoughts. The cabin was located deep in the woods, and it seemed like the perfect place to escape from reality. The owner of the cabin, a middle-aged man named Mr. Jenkins, had shown me around and handed me the keys. He seemed like a nice enough man, but there was something about him that was just weird. He lived out here, in the middle of nowhere, and nobody seemed to know him. However, I brushed off my uneasiness and thanked him before he left. The first few days in the cabin were peaceful, and I spent my time exploring the woods and enjoying the solitude. But things took a dark turn when Mr. Jenkins started showing up unannounced, claiming that he was just checking on me. At first, I thought it was just a friendly visit. I didn't really think about it much, but then I started noticing him following me when I went out for walks. I felt like I was being watched all the time. I started to get a creepy feeling whenever I was near Mr. Jenkins. He had a lecherous look in his eyes, and his comments kind of weirded me out. I wasn't sure what his intent was, but because of this, I tried my best to avoid him, although he seemed to always be around. One morning, I woke up and went to the coffee machine, only to find Mr. Jenkins standing beside it. When I asked him what he was doing, he replied saying that he was fixing the coffee machine. I was completely creeped out and I just went back inside. I didn't know what he was doing, but he clearly wasn't fixing it. The coffee machine was never broken in the first place. I just knew not to touch that coffee machine ever again. The next day, one of my friends called me and asked me if I could come over. I agreed to come, as over at the cabins I had literally no one to talk to, except the weird landlord. When I came back, though, I was extremely tired, so I just crashed on the bed, and I slept for a little while. I woke up petrified. I swear I just sat in the bed for half an hour, processing what might be pounding on the door outside of my bedroom this late. I tried to shake off the feeling of fright, and I looked for my phone to try and call the police, but I just couldn't find it. All I could do at this point was to stand there. There is no way that I was going to leave the bedroom when someone could be outside this late at night. So I just stood there for about half an hour, not being able to sleep. I finally opened the door, but there was no one inside. I quickly searched the place for my phone, but it was nowhere to be seen. Jenkins must have took it. I didn't know what I was going to do without my phone. I didn't even have a car to come back to my parents, and I definitely wasn't going to walk all the way back this late, and with this creep probably following me. So after I realized that I couldn't do anything before daytime, I went back to bed, locking every door and window in my cabin. All I knew was that I was leaving this place tomorrow, for sure. For sure. For sure. I slept for a couple of hours, and I woke up at about 4 a.m. in the morning. This was perfect, as I was planning on packing up and leaving early without Jenkins noticing me. I picked up most of my stuff. I just needed to go for a quick bathroom break, and I was out. When I went outside, however, Jenkins was there. He stared at me. We were both standing there. Not a word was spoken. We stared at each other for about a minute before he backed off into the woods. I didn't know what he was about to do, so I got extremely scared and I just started running back to my parents. I got tired pretty quickly, though, so I walked for some time. As I was walking, I heard footsteps behind me. I quickened my pace, but the footsteps behind me grew louder. My heart was pounding in my chest as I realized that it was Mr. Jenkins. I started to panic and ran towards the main road, hoping to get away from him. But Mr. Jenkins was fast and soon caught up to me. He grabbed me by the arm and pulled me towards the woods. I screamed, but it seemed like no one could hear me. I struggled, and he tripped and fell, letting go of me. As I ran through the woods, I noticed a road and a couple of cars passing by. I begged for someone to stop, and the person who stopped was an elderly man. He took me to the nearest police station where I reported Mr. Jenkins' heinous crimes. The police raided his cabin, but he was nowhere to be found. It seemed like he had disappeared without a trace. The police searched for Mr. Jenkins, but they were never able to find him. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. I later found out that Mr. Jenkins had a history of kidnapping and assaulting young women. He had been evading the police for years, but I was the first one to actually escape from him. I returned to my parents, and they forgave me for running away.